the core of what we do, and this impacts the link building and the SEO, and it also makes us not really care too much about what Google's updates are up to. We start by defining what a clear business outcome is for our client. And then step number two, we look at who's already done that successfully. And then we map out the volumes, the frequencies, all of those things of what they've done, even down to a granular level of what is the anchor text breakdown we want to use by percentage based off of the top ranking pages for any particular industry and location. So if you do that, the process remains the same of collecting the data, of analyzing it, of breaking down very specifically, but your outputs will vary based on the industry and the specific competitors they have.
Welcome back to the Honest Marketing Podcast, where you learn proven strategies to grow your business without selling your soul. I'm your host, Travis Bliffen, and my guest today is another Travis Bliffen over at Stellar SEO, come to talk not just about kind of basic SEO stuff, but also some of the specific things that he does with his agency that are really next level strategies that I'm really excited to dig into. So Travis, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to see where it goes.
Absolutely. So I think just for a little bit of context, I would love for you to lay out the kind of work that you do over at Stellar SEO and maybe what makes you a little bit different than other SEO digital marketing agencies.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing about us is we're very specialized in SEO. So we don't offer any auxiliary services, video, social media, paid advertising. We've really, for the past 12 years, kept our focus extremely tight to SEO. And even within that, we kind of have some specializations of industries, real estate, legal, as well as a particular subset of SEO link building. We've narrowed in on a tight topic already and made that even more specific. The reason we've done that is because you can then make processes and you can make quality control measures and you can do a lot of stuff to make sure that even if you start to scale up, you're able to produce quality outputs. You don't really lose anything at scale, which is a problem you have sometimes whenever you have an all-encompassing agency. And so that's really what set us apart. And kind of if you see reviews and things of us online, a lot of people will specifically say easy to understand, quality of stuff. And we like to get things done when we say we will too, which to me seems like that should be expected, but it turns out it isn't. So in customer surveys, one of the favorite reasons they stay with us is because we actually meet deadlines that we set. So that's kind of the quick overview of it though.
Imagine that, just like deliver on customer expectations and you're golden, like you're good to go. Do what you say you're going to do, right?
I know. I thought, because I came into this, I had no previous business experience. And I thought, man, it must be like really hard to create a successful business. And then when you look at it, it just kind of comes down to some basic stuff. Do what you say you'll do when you say you'll do it. Do a good job of it and take pride in what you're doing, because that will influence how well you do the first two things. And if you do that, the rest of it kind of falls into place. Well, with a little bit of management, it falls into place. But yeah, I'd say it's a lot more simple than you might think it is to be successful, and which kind of makes it alarming how many agencies fail, considering.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very easy for agencies to have the reputation of everything's clicking and working and moving during the sales pipeline. And then once you're locked into that retainer, it's like you can't get a hold of anybody. Things are late. Things are subpar. You got passed off to some kind of like junior account manager that you never met before. And now all of a sudden the deliverables are out the window. So I imagine that's probably good for like word of mouth and referrals for, companies recommending other companies work with you. Have you seen that be a strong prospect pipeline for you? Just doing great work and then getting those type of referral traffic?
We have. So without asking people, we've had, multiple clients come to us where they said so-and-so, which was one of our customers, was in a private group. Right. Like for one example, mortgage broker, he's in a private mortgage broker group. He was just sharing what happened with his website. And the next thing I know, there's like 12 scheduled meetings the next day after his post from the thing. Several went on to become clients, and he inadvertently was just saying, I was working with these guys. Here's what happened. Yeah. So we've seen that happen several times over the course of our time in business. The other thing too, like 6 months is an average retention time for a client in the SEO space. We have a lot of clients that are on year 5, 6, or 7 with us, which is kind of unheard of in the industry. And so, I attribute that to, what I mentioned earlier, but also we like to look at things from a business standpoint. Like I love SEO, but if it won't make any money, let's do something else. Let's find another way to apply it. Like SEO is a great tool, but that's what it is. I mean, you can rank stuff that will make no money for you. There's no reason to do that. Let's go ahead and rank something else that makes money. So I think between delivering and then having those, a realistic output and realistic outlook on what the business impact of it is, I mean, it makes a huge difference. And that's I guess that's where we've really had a lot of success there, is because we see both and how they work together. Whereas some agencies really just focus on, okay, here's the keywords, we do the very technical processes, we get the things to rank. Okay, everything ranks. Here's the report that says it ranks. Aren't you very happy? And then the business owner's like, no, because I didn't make any money. And on our side, we're like, who cares about the keywords? Let's rank 70% of those. If it makes us a lot of money, then forget the other 30%. Let's focus on that. And so it's just kind of I guess probably because I didn't come from like I didn't work at an SEO agency before this. I just kind of learned everything on the fly through testing. And so by default, I had to figure out ways to do things with SEO that would have a benefit. And it kind of shaped what we've done ever since.
Now you mentioned that there's a couple like key verticals or niches, or industries that you typically serve at a high level. What are those groupings of the types of clients that you've kind of like landed on as like, we serve these types of clients really well? And then how did you stumble into those? Was it a deliberate process? Like, we want to go after these specific industries, or it just kind of happened organically? I'd love to hear kind of the evolution of your client roster and like how you've positioned yourself.
Yeah. So basically in 2012, we started. And so for the first 3 years, we just did full service SEO. And we didn't really have a particular target audience. And we basically did SEO for everyone who, that we could do it for. And then in 2015, we're like, okay, this is getting wild. Google had made a lot of changes. I'm like, you know what? There's a big demand for link building, but there's not a lot of companies that do it really well, and it's hard to scale. And so basically, we stopped offering full service SEO. As every full service SEO client came to the end of their agreement, we phased them out and we only took on link building clients. And so we did that from 2015 all the way until 2020. And that took us through a huge growth evolution of our business in doing that and narrowing down to that specific thing. In 2020, we noticed that while we do link building for a lot of people, there's a couple of core groups that really come up to the top. One of those is other SEO agencies, which we still do a lot of link building for them. They'll white label to us. But the other one we noticed is law firms, in particular, personal injury law firms. They're in very competitive industries, so they require a lot of link building. And so the first thing we added back in 2021 is full service SEO for injury law firms, because we already had a large roster of people we were doing link building for. And we saw that we could further improve what was happening for them by adding back those additional services. And so in the same manner, we went through and we looked at what are the other spaces that we're seeing a lot of link building from. And so that's how we kind of went into real estate, which was another one of those, in finance. And so that's when you have the real estate investors, you have the mortgage brokers, and then, not really as much real estate agents, but more of the finance or the investor side of it is where we focused. And that again just came from noticing a high concentration of people that we were already working with in link building, but also the competitiveness of those industries is what makes it great. So personal injury law firms and finance, I mean, those are kind of up near the top. And so we already had the scalable link building process in place that we had built. And then we added on top of that, the other SEO services that we had. And so it was just kind of a natural progression to that. But we didn't go and say preliminarily, like, okay, let's do a lot of research. And then we're going to say, this is our target market. And we're going to like, it just kind of happened. We noticed, more and more people fit that target. And so we added those and we were able, between 2020 and 2023, I think we increased our top line revenue 170% by adding that on. I think we're in the running this year for the 5,000, and they may or may not have said it, but you can't officially say it yet. But I think you might see us on that list. So it was a good move to add it. That's kind of how we did it, though.
That's really cool. Now, I am curious because I know a lot of agencies that, have a very specific specialty, or they're trying to figure out how do we, create scalable systems for similar types of clients. But then, especially when it comes to SEO, you don't want your clients running into each other or competing against each other. So how do you segment out one client from another when you're doing SEO work, especially if it's not necessarily localized, or maybe the types of clients where there's indie law firms or real estate, those tend to be more localized where you can offer exclusivity in their market. Like
Mhm.
what does that look like to create scalable systems for a particular industry and then be able to apply those over different geographies? And then how do you manage expectations with clients, but then also give them exclusivity in the specific area they are? Or am I like reading into this and that's actually not what you do and you do something totally different? I would just love to hear kind of your approach to that.
So I will say broadly that companies historically who have specialized in a single industry and they've been able to reach a certain level of scale, say probably around $10 million, something like that, they do run into problems with competition, and so they don't offer exclusivity. It seems to be how it goes, depending on, of course, on the size of the industry. But I know, like in the legal space specifically, there's some agencies that have hit that problem, and so they've had to go back and look at how they can expand beyond that. But what we do with the personal injury lawyers and also with the mortgage brokers and real estate investors is all three of those tend to have a very geo-targeted audience, right? And so we do some mass tort stuff as well, and that's national. But then again, there's so many mass tort case types that one law firm may really be emphasizing this one, and firm number two is really in on the other one. And so we just kind of look at what their real focus is, and we look at how we can work with them without directly competing. Now, we have had some instances where we've had two people, they were in the exact same city and they wanted to target the exact same keywords. And so we currently still offer exclusivity. And so we just turned those clients away and said, we'll reach back out to you if it changes with our current partner here. But for right now, we've already got somebody there. And so by spreading that out a little bit, right, between mortgage brokers, between real estate investors and law firms, it allows us the opportunity we can continue to scale for several more years before we're at the point where we have every city covered for every combination. And now we have to go back and pick up client number two. And so that's why I'm, and with the finance too, we can also broaden that out, like, mortgage brokers, as I mentioned, but there's other loan types that you could add in there as well to diversify that a little bit. And specifically within the mortgage space too, you have different targets. Like some people, they target loans for real estate investors, whereas other people are direct to consumers. And they're just looking basically for homeowners. And so there's some distinctions there as well that allow you to segment those and avoid competition. But we've already ran into cases where we had to turn people away, or maybe sometimes they'll be 80% different and they'll have a 20% overlap, in which case we just talk to both clients about it and say, hey, this is the 20% overlap you're both going to have. Are you cool with that? And if they are, then we'll work with both of them, and that works out pretty well. But that's kind of how we've been handling it so far. But I do know that in the future it could become problematic. But I think we'd probably just first add a closely related industry before we went back and started doing direct competitors. Mostly, I just like our clients to be winning. And if you have two clients there, one of them is always not winning. And so to me, it seems like you get into a little bit of an ethical concern there. Like, what do you just say whoever pays the most? I mean, because that doesn't, there's ways to do it both ways. I just personally not a big fan of it.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, there's different permutations you can run. It's like there's slightly adjacent industries where they don't actually touch each other, but the strategies would be very similar. So you'd be able to execute for different types of lawyers or different types of real estate professionals, where the types of keyword strategies you're implementing or the kind of link building that you're doing are similar enough that you can execute the same playbook without directly butting heads with the clients that you already have or sabotaging the other strategies you're working on. It's like if you're running paid ads and now you're targeting the same audience and now you have two ad campaigns that are one-upping each other, and now you're paying 5 times as much because you're competing against yourself. It's like you never want to be in that situation if you can help it. So I'm glad to hear you're not in that situation yet. I'm glad that that hasn't happened to you yet.
Yeah, we do our best to avoid it, but it'll inevitably will happen at some point in time. And then I'm just thinking we'll just pick one to work with and turn the other one away, and go for adjacent fields. But
For sure. Now, I'd love to hear, like you mentioned that you had this really intense focus on link building services, and then you started expanding into additional SEO services for specific industries. What's kind of the mix or best practices that you're seeing across your clients as far as the kinds of things that they need in order to be successful with SEO in 2024? and beyond. There's a lot of huff and puff about Google and cookies, and they're always changing their platform and what they care about, and AI is becoming a thing, and maybe blogs aren't as important anymore. Or I would just love to hear kind of like what you're seeing, and how you've built your services around creating those positive business outcomes that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so I'd say at the core of what we do, and this impacts the link building and the SEO, and it also makes us not really care too much about what Google's updates are up to. We start by defining what a clear business outcome is for our client. Like, here's exactly what they hope to accomplish from this. And then step number two, we look at who's already done that successfully. And so in every scenario, like, you could go to any industry, like there's industries we like to work with, but we could go to beauty products and we could apply the exact same strategy and we could rank somebody very well in beauty products. So we look at the competitors who have done that, and then we map out the volumes, the frequencies, all of those things of what they've done, even down to a granular level of what is the anchor text breakdown we want to use by percentage based off of the top ranking pages for any particular industry and location. And so if you do that, the process remains the same of collecting the data, of analyzing it, of breaking down very specifically, but your outputs will vary based on the industry and the specific competitors they have. And so if Google tomorrow does a complete 180 and they change everything that they want to see to rank a website, all we have to do is go see the 10 websites that are ranking now, look at what they've done differently than the 10 that got zapped, and now we know what Google likes. Like, there's all there is the Google leak, and there are like 14,000 ranking factors, and it was a big to do. And a lot of these, like, it sounds cool, I guess. Like, let me really go into all this 14,000 ranking factors, and I see all these articles popping up and people are talking about it. But the reality is, nobody's really going to influence 14,000 factors very effectively. And so just go and look at what the successful competition is doing, map all of that out, replicate that, and then add something more to it based off of that knowledge. And 90% of the time, that's all you need to do to be successful. And then the 10% where they stick, that's when it makes sense then to start going really down these rabbit trails to figure out, okay, we did X, Y, and Z, we're matched across the board. Site still doesn't rank. Now let's go and explore these other, you know, 13,950 ranking factors that might be influencing this, because the ones that generally work aren't doing the trick. That's the biggest thing, is every time there's an update, people are, SEO's dead, SEO's dying, Google hates me, I'm getting out of SEO now because they made an update. Like, just go look and see what's ranking. The answer is right in front of you. You know, if you had an affiliate site and it got killed in the helpful content update, maybe we'll go look at Reddit threads and see how you could monetize that with affiliate links, because those things rank for anything and everything right now. So if that's how you were making your money with affiliate income, go on over and spam Reddit. I mean, you didn't hear it from me, but that's probably what I would do if I was making affiliate income and my site got zapped, because that's where it is. So regardless of what change they make, if you just go and look at what's ranking, you can figure out, okay, here's what they do. And even if you look at a lot of helpful content, what the heck is helpful content? You can't really define it, because helpful content varies by the person. Even if you know the search intent, if their intention is to gather information about something, well, now you're assuming what level of prior knowledge they have. Because if I tell you how to do level 5 stuff and you're at level 1, that content isn't helpful to you at all. And so if you look at what Google shows, that's what the helpful content is, they think. Sometimes it isn't the best content. I've seen plenty of cases where you have an expert in a field and they've handwritten every article themselves. It's got, verified scholarly articles, medical documents, everything else, and it doesn't rank for anything. And then the top 5 results are, somebody who just rewrote an article that used to rank, and they don't have any clue what they're talking about. And so sometimes you have to know, like, what Google says and then what Google can actually do. They don't always line up. And so if you look at what's ranking, you can figure out, like, okay, I don't actually need to hire the world's leading plastic surgeon to write blog posts for me for $500,000 a piece, because the number one ranking result was written, overseas for 2 cents per word and optimized using Surfer, and now it's making all the money. So it's easy to get like wrapped up in all the nonsense, but you don't really need to do that in most cases. And we've worked on some really interesting problems and cases and penalty recoveries and things like that where you do have to go really off the deep end to figure out what's happened. But most of the time that isn't the case. And it's just poor execution, or you try to satisfy these non-satisfiable things. Like if you set out to write the most helpful article ever and you're not using competitor data to figure that out, you got a 50-50 shot at best that your article is really going to be that helpful. There's cases, but not prevalent.
Yeah, and there's certainly like the blocking and tackling basic fundamentals of SEO that I think a lot more often than not people are familiar with or think about. And then there's like tried and true strategies for SEO. But I think what really separates, from my viewpoint, agencies that do an exceptional job, or even just experts that do an exceptional job, is learning how to pivot when the thing that was working stops working. It's like anyone can set up a quote unquote SEO optimized, which is like saying ATM machine, but an SEO optimized website or content strategy. And then it like works for a hot second and then something changes, or all of a sudden it's not working anymore. Knowing how to pivot or even how to identify what's wrong so you can fix it, I think is then what elevates and separates those agencies that really do have an expertise that can evolve the strategy as things and circumstances shift. And so I'd love to hear more about those type of instances. If you have any stories or anecdotes of like SEO penalties or things that have happened to your clients, and your methodology, which you kind of laid out kind of at a high level, I'd love to even get more granular. Your methodology for when things break or stop working or the traffic just falls off a cliff, how do you then go and analyze what's going on to then come up with the new strategy to get back to where you were, even better than where you were?
Yeah, so I'll preface the answer to this by saying that a lot of SEO problems are actually business model problems, not from the client business model, but actually the SEO agency's business model. So one of the most common things that we run across is you take a very large SEO company and most of their staff is very junior level, to the point that a lot of them are executing tasks and they don't really have any clue why they're doing it. And so that works really good in a scenario where you have no problems, no pre-existing history of your website, anything of the sort. All right. So I'll give you a specific example because it's been several years now. So we were contacted maybe 2015, 2016. I'm not sure the exact year, maybe 2018. I don't know. By the Midwest division of Toyota. One of their dealerships had been around for like 50 years. He was the top selling Toyota dealership in all the area. He had great rankings. And for 2 years, he was basically at the bottom of the barrel. And this guy, I met the guy, a really cool guy. He was in his 80s at the time, and he'd been doing it a long time, very popular in the area. What happened is the company got his website penalized, dealer e-process, very large company, huge in the automotive space, one of the biggest. And for roughly 2 years, nobody could figure out what was wrong. They just kept adding more and more of the same thing to it, thinking that would fix it. So when you actually get to the inner workings of it, what happened was they just assigned, they had a few top level strategy people and they would assign down to the lower levels of people, oh, do X, Y, and Z. But they didn't really have any process in place to troubleshoot or problem solve once they got the site penalized. And so, they were actually taking the problem and they were amplifying it versus getting anywhere closer to fixing it. And I mean, I talked to people at the company all the way near the top, and it just wasn't going to get anywhere. So they brought us on board, the dealership and the Toyota. John Smeros was his name, I believe, from Toyota. He brought us on board, and we actually were able to reverse the problem to fix it. And so it took about 6 months, but once we did that, they regained all of their traffic, all of their rankings, and sales went back, all of that stuff happened. And then wouldn't you know it, because they have a large contract across the board, they went right back to using the same company that got them in trouble, because that was the way that corporate sometimes approves stuff. And so the whole reason it took time. Like, we've had the penalty figured out and fixed within a couple of months of research and actual adjustments. And then we had to give it some time for Google to release them because it was algorithmic. the penalty. So once they made a big refresh, then the site basically overnight, 4 or 5, 600% increase in visibility. And so, basically the problem is that because it worked for 80% of their customers, they really didn't have any interest in solving the problem because that doesn't scale well. We've had another experience. We actually hired for us a company to do pay-per-click advertising. So they're, Inc. 5000. They're one of the fastest growing pay-per-click companies, huge company. And so, same thing. They had a couple people at the top who were very skilled, knew what they were doing, a lot of very junior level people. And so we paid them to run ads for law firm SEO to generate law firm leads. And so we checked back after 2 weeks, and the first set of ads they ran, they spent several $1,000s. They actually were running ads as if we were a law firm. So we started getting these leads from people like, can you help me with I was bitten by a dog. Can you help me with this? Like, what is going on? So I contacted them. I say, well, guys, what have you done? And they're like, oh gosh, yeah, we'll fix that for you. And so, I mean, they're like, that was it. That was their fix, is they're just give it to another junior level person. And so that is why most SEO companies don't do a great job. And that's why people have a lot of failure. It isn't because, in my opinion, it isn't because SEO is so complex and so hard to understand. It's because you just don't have the right level of experience. And so one thing that we've done, and this is behind our process and everything else, is we only hire people who have a very solid understanding of the bigger picture. So when they do things, they know why they're doing things. And so, like, our most junior SEO person right now actually was upper management at the agency that they came from. And so that allows us to make processes that work really well because they understand, even at the lowest level, if I'm doing this set of jobs or this set of tasks, it's because it impacts all of these things above it. And that's really what has separated us from so many other agencies where they use a very similar model. Let's hire one experienced person, a whole bunch of inexperienced people, and it will work a lot of the time. And so for us, we're much bigger on client retention over the long term than we are on onboarding a high volume of new clients. And so that's part of it as well. Whereas the other business model, and this is the other point I wanted to get to, some SEO agencies specifically have a business model where they intend to keep clients for 3 to 6 months, because that's roughly how long, because of general concepts, that people will give you with seeing no results before they want to jump ship. And so if you look at the way these agencies are structured, they'll have like 100 salespeople for every, 10 or 20 people that actually execute the campaigns. And it's because they don't really have any intention of anything good happening for you. They just want to sell it to you, get you into the thing. They collect the money, they move on to the next with a cookie cutter plan. Like, that's why a lot of SEO agencies fell. And even some of the bigger ones across, industries, they have a very similar setup. That's where the problem comes in. And so the way we distinguish ourselves from them, and the reason why we've had so much more success, is we hire people with the right experience, or we make sure that they have, on the link building side, that one, we break that down into an assembly line style almost, so that we have people very specialized at one job. And on the SEO side, we just focused on people who have a very good knowledge of the big picture. When you combine those with the competitive research process, you can then actually start to pick apart everything that you need to do to be successful. And so that's why, even, for some industries, like, we've had websites, we've worked on websites that rank nationally for things like mesothelioma. I mean, that's pretty high on the competition scale. And but for us, it isn't really that hard. And so one thing we like to say is SEO is a game of output, right? Once you know exactly what you need to do, the cost of SEO, the budget, that really comes in just producing it in the right quantities. And so that's where our link building side being built how it was, and having a white label um, behind it, so that we do it at the scale for other agencies, we're able to then meet those outputs with the right strategies. So that's how we led to being successful and being in these industries, because a lot of people will have a higher failure rate in the industries we work in than they will in some, if you're like a local plumber you don't really need, a lot of times you don't have to have like a world-class SEO to get your map packs to rank versus some of the more competitive stuff. So that's what I think it is. A lot of it isn't necessarily SEO focused. It's more of a business problem, as I said. And so that's my 2 cents on it, at least.
Well, I think it's worth a little bit more than 2 cents. That was great. I've never heard that take or that perspective before. And I've talked to a lot of other SEO people on the show. So before we wrap up, I would just love to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can learn more about you, where they can learn more about Stellar SEO, and then what would be some next steps, whether you have some consumable information, downloads, PDFs, blog posts, like where would be a good place for people to go to learn more or take that next step to see, how they could potentially benefit from working with you and your agency.
Absolutely. So just go to stellarseo.com and then just contact there. It's hard to miss a contact form there. And if you have something specific you want to ask, go to the contact page and there's an open form field there. You can ask it. But basically what we like to do with people is we just offer a 15-minute kind of consultative call. And it's just to kind of hear about what you want to accomplish, what you're trying to do. And then we'll be able to tell you if it's something we may or may not be able to help with. But a lot of times from that, we'll also be able to point you in the right direction if it doesn't sound like SEO is going to be the immediate thing. And so we've had a lot of instances, people come to the site, they contact us, we hop on that first call. We say, oh, actually, you should go do X, Y, and Z first, and then come back to us. And then like 2 years later, they show back up, they've done X, Y, and Z, and now they become a client. So we're really big on that, actually, just hearing what you have to do. That's another thing that sets us apart. We don't really have any salespeople. I've been the sole salesperson for the company for 12 years, and it's because we retain clients for so long. And like I said, we still managed to hit really impressive revenue growth doing that. So, I mean, you get to talk to me if you schedule a consultation. So you can ask me point blank, here's what I have going on. Is this like feasible or not? We'll help you figure that out. If you're not to that point yet, though, the blog is loaded with information. We cover a lot of topics related to the specific industries we have, but also related to some processes, and including there's a link building guide there that's been up for a couple of years now, and it's probably 12,000 words, but it literally has spreadsheet links and everything, so you can just follow along the directions and build a link building campaign if you're so inclined to do so. And so we don't try to guard the information that we're putting out. It's really meant to be actionable, but by all means, even if you're not 100% to the point where you're like, oh, I definitely want to hire an SEO company, never hurts to have the call just so we can kind of point you in the right direction, or talk about where you're at, talk about where you're trying to go.
Perfect. Well, I'll definitely leave a link to the website in the show notes. So you can click on that, go right over. Travis, it's been a pleasure. Always great to meet another Travis and talk marketing. So this has been a blast. Thanks for being on Honest Marketing Podcast.
Hey, absolutely. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.